We are getting all the gang members off the streets and the drug dealers. Sinaloa.
At 4:17 in the morning, a helicopter dropped into a low hover, its blades carving through the darkness, while a line of unmarked SUVs swept in from 3 directions and sealed every exit around a warehouse that looked ordinary from the outside. For months, according to publicly released federal affidavits from the Justice Department, U.S. agencies had tracked unusual nighttime traffic and encrypted signals tied to a multi-state trafficking network. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment the cartel believed would pass unnoticed. As the minutes tightened, FBI teams moved in alongside ICE, DEA, HSI, and federal tactical units, each step choreographed after weeks of cross-agency surveillance. Operators stacked on the reinforced door, watching a final encrypted transmission pulse across their monitors before the signal abruptly stopped. That was the cue. The breaching charge detonated, sending a burst of sparks across the concrete and opening a path into the unknown. Inside, the first wave of agents expected crates and forklifts. Instead, their lights revealed something else entirely. The interior was layered with false walls, sealed rooms, and a command center layout that looked more like a military hub than a civilian warehouse. In that instant, the scale of the operation shifted. If a cartel could build this on American soil, what else was hidden behind the next wall? Before we go any further, make sure to subscribe to Military Power, because the truth behind this raid only gets more intense from here. At the moment the flashbang shattered silence, the steel door of the warehouse buckled under the impact. Agents surged forward, light beams slicing through darkness, boots echoing across concrete. Hidden cameras blinked off, motion sensors fell mute, and armed guards sprinted into concealed corridors. What had looked from the outside like an ordinary industrial building quickly revealed itself as a fortress. Shadows shifted behind false walls, and hallways branched unexpectedly, drawing the assault teams deeper into a maze. The first impression among the federal task force: this place was no mere stash house. Stacks of identical crates, rows of vacuum-sealed packages, sealed barrels, packaging machines, and even what appeared to be encrypted communication gear filled vast chambers. The layout was far too structured and methodical, akin to a legitimate logistics center, yet everything inside pointed to illegal enterprise. In that still moment after breaching, the meaning was clear. The cartel had built a supply chain mirror of corporate America, blending illicit traffic inside a shell of industrial normalcy. As agents advanced, a muffled knocking came from behind a locked shipping container door. At first the sound was faint, like something tapping from the inside of a coffin. The team froze. The banging grew urgent, desperate. When the door finally gave way, inside were dozens of civilians, men and women, young adults, pale and gaunt. Some crumpled forward, relief and terror pressing into their faces as agents shone lights across cramped faces. These were not cartel foot soldiers, but victims, human beings locked inside, hidden among the crates and steel corridors. In that single moment, the objective of the mission changed. What had begun as a narcotics operation had suddenly transformed into a rescue effort. The facility, once thought to be only a distribution center for drugs, revealed its second, more horrifying purpose. It was not just a hub for illegal substances, it operated as a holding site, a waypoint for human beings treated like freight. The warehouse's clean aisles, false walls, and secret chambers had concealed more than narcotics. For those on the front lines that morning, the message was unmistakable. Organized crime had upgraded. It no longer lurked in back-alley stash houses or ramshackle safe houses. It now replicated legitimate infrastructure, warehouses, supply corridors, transport veins, using encrypted communications, compartmentalized layouts, and industrial-grade concealment. What looked like business on the surface hid brutal commerce beneath. This raid peeled back one layer. But the question lingers. If a network this refined could be built in plain sight, how many more lie waiting across the country, hidden behind closed doors and industrial facades. Inside the massive warehouse, the reality of what agents had stepped into took shape almost immediately. Under the dim glow of tactical flashlights, long rows of sealed packages stretched into the distance, stacked with the precision of a large distribution center. Bundles wrapped in vacuum-sealed plastic sat beside metal drums filled with chemicals, while crates packed with narcotics climbed toward the ceiling. As teams moved deeper into the facility, they uncovered enormous quantities of cocaine, high-purity methamphetamine, heroin, and fentanyl-based pills, all compressed and organized into industrial-scale loads. When the final count was recorded, the total weight reached 3.4 tons, a number so large that it erased any possibility of this being a minor hiding place. It was clear this structure was never meant to serve a local dealer. It functioned as a regional hub capable of supplying entire states. In one of the interior rooms, investigators found equipment that looked more appropriate for a licensed pharmaceutical site than a criminal compound. Heavy tablet press machines stood beside high-capacity vacuum sealers, and barrels of precursor chemicals lined the concrete floor. Stacks of identical packaging sat next to cash-counting machines and ledgers written in coded shorthand. None of this resembled the improvised tools of a street-level trafficking ring. Instead, it mirrored the machinery of a highly organized enterprise, running with near-corporate efficiency. For the federal teams sweeping the building, the message was unmistakable. This cartel had copied the operational style of legitimate supply chains, camouflaging criminal work behind the appearance of an ordinary industrial warehouse. The vast volume of seized drugs made its implications clear. A shipment of this magnitude had the potential to saturate dozens of American cities, overwhelming regional law enforcement and public health systems. This was never intended to be a neighborhood stash site. It operated as a distribution node designed to assemble, package, and move shipments across long distances. That understanding became even sharper once agents discovered a collection of maps and transport documents scattered across a desk in a secured room. Detailed shipping manifests listed outbound routes, while highlighted sections on a wall map pointed toward major interstate arteries. Among the most frequently noted roads were Interstate 35 and Interstate 10, two highways that cut across the United States from the southwest toward the Midwest and eastern states. These routes were not chosen at random. They form key logistical channels that legitimate trucking companies use daily, which made them ideal corridors for concealing illicit cargo within normal commercial traffic. As agents continued to document the narcotics and machinery, an unexpected discovery shifted the tone of the operation yet again. Behind one of the false walls hidden within the warehouse structure, officers located a concealed storage area containing several oversized crates labeled as industrial materials. Once the crates were pried open, they revealed yet another level of deception. Instead of tools or mechanical supplies, each container was tightly packed with pill bundles prepared for immediate shipment. Nearby, paperwork referenced destinations in states far beyond Texas, indicating that these shipments had been scheduled for distribution across long-range networks. The sophistication behind this setup was striking. Every layer of the warehouse, from the equipment to the packaging to the transport documents, had been designed to support mass-scale movement of narcotics. Nothing inside the building reflected the behavior of a small operation. This warehouse belonged to a cartel that had pushed its smuggling strategy to an industrial level. The enormous drug load, the professional manufacturing tools, the chemical inventories, and the mapped-out logistics routes all pointed toward a nationwide operation. Rather than acting as independent criminals, those running this facility were part of a coordinated system extending across state lines. Their success hinged on exploiting legitimate transportation channels, blending illegal shipments into the constant flow of goods moving across America's highways and freight corridors. As agents processed the evidence, bricks of narcotics arranged on the concrete floor, folders filled with coded delivery schedules, machinery that could mass-produce thousands of pills per hour. The true weight of the raid became impossible to ignore. This was no simple seizure. It was a strike at the heart of a finely tuned trafficking network. Such an operation required planning, funding, and manpower far beyond the scope of a local dealer. It represented a hidden infrastructure modeled on the practices of real businesses, complete with schedules, specialized equipment, and layered concealment techniques. The raid did more than remove drugs from circulation. It tore open a system that had operated under the radar by mimicking legitimate industry. The warehouse functioned not just as a drug depot, but as part of a larger machine, where narcotics were processed, sorted, disguised, and routed with the precision of a commercial supply chain. Every inch of the facility testified to a criminal enterprise that had learned to use the methods of lawful commerce to hide illegal trade. By the time the last crate was examined and the last ledger photographed, investigators understood that the significance of the operation stretched far beyond the building's walls. What they uncovered was a model, a template that criminal networks could replicate elsewhere. The Texas warehouse was only one component of a much broader system. And although shutting it down was a decisive blow, the documents, maps, and materials left behind hinted that the network extended further, supported by similar facilities scattered across multiple states. The raid exposed the inner workings of a cartel that had industrialized its operations, turning hidden smuggling routes into a business engineered to move massive quantities of narcotics across the nation. But as agents realized the warehouse was engineered to move narcotics across entire regions, one question pushed to the front. If this place functioned like a cartel-run factory, then who exactly was operating it from the inside? And how many people were keeping this machine alive? Inside that warehouse, the scale of the operation unfolded with grim clarity as federal agents advanced room by room. Every corridor revealed more evidence, not hidden stash boxes for a few kilos, but industrial-grade packing and distribution infrastructure, manned and maintained. The haul was enormous and methodical. When the count finished, authorities confirmed that 142 individuals were taken into custody. The group included truck drivers, warehouse managers, crew handling coded communications, money laundering operatives, and armed guards. Every role needed to keep the operation running. Reports on the bus cite exactly that number. 142 arrested in the nationwide trafficking bust centered on the Texas warehouse. As the raid unfolded, some suspects tried to flee upward through ceiling panels. Others scrambled into ductwork overhead, attempting to vanish into shadows and ventilation shafts. The sudden realization forced agents to shift tactics. In one instance, a locked shipping container had to be forcibly opened, after noises from inside betrayed an attempt at hiding more than contraband. What was inside that metal container stunned even hardened officers. Not goods, but frightened people. Human beings, trafficked, hidden beside narcotics and cash. This mass arrest, involving people from legitimate-looking jobs such as driving and logistics, as well as shadow operators like hackers and money handlers, delivered harsh evidence. This cartel network had embedded itself within the structure of lawful American enterprise. On paper, many of those detained had normal jobs, legitimate tax records, plausible backgrounds. In practice, they were running a criminal supply chain, logistic convoys by day, smuggling operations by night. The dual existence underlines a chilling sophistication. By operating in parallel, the cartel masked illicit logistics inside conventional business infrastructure, defeating simple suspicion. The fact that so many arrests came from roles normally associated with everyday commerce, warehouse staff, drivers, freight coordinators, speaks volumes about how deeply the cartel had infiltrated supply chains. Some detainees reportedly earned legal income, with stable employment records. Yet they allegedly took part in encrypting communications, organizing shipments, and moving terror-grade narcotics across state lines, motivated by profits that far exceeded their daily wage. For several, moonlighting for the cartel promised earnings many times higher, enough to outweigh any risk of exposure. That lure proved powerful. Authorities described the bust as more than a drug seizure. It was a dismantling of a fully operational criminal, logistics, and personnel network. It revealed how trafficking organizations no longer rely solely on street-level dealers or roadside stash houses. Instead, they build infrastructure that mirrors legitimate logistics companies, warehouses, transport fleets, coded communication, internal security, money movement operations, all wrapped inside plausible business facades. For law enforcement, dismantling such an enterprise required not only force, but months of intelligence work, digital surveillance, and coordinated multi-agency cooperation. In the morning's light, as agents cuffed suspects and led them into SUVs, the scene served as a stark warning. Organized crime in 2025 is industrialized. It uses the same supply routes, the same transport networks, even the same job titles found in legal commerce. But with one difference. The cargo is poison. The wages come from violence, and the profits feed a hidden war on communities across the continent. Even with 142 arrests, investigators cautioned that this may represent only one node in a sprawling network. The number stunned local residents and federal officials alike, but they insisted the crackdown was only the beginning. Soon, more warehouses, shipping hubs, and financial conduits could come under fire. The bust laid bare a system that had adapted and grown under the radar. If this warehouse ran like a fully staffed organization, then who was financing it? And how far did the money trail actually reach beyond Texas? The deeper the agents moved into the warehouse, the more the operation shifted from a simple narcotics bust to something far larger. Behind a row of steel cabinets, investigators uncovered a stack of ledgers wrapped in plastic. When opened, the pages told a story far more unsettling than the drugs piled in the next room. The records listed weekly and monthly revenue flows, and the totals were staggering. According to figures later confirmed in federal briefings and mirrored in the public reporting from the YouTube news breakdown of the raid, the warehouse generated over $28 million per month through narcotics movement and associated financial channels. The numbers were handwritten next to coded references, transport schedules, and strings of cryptic identifiers. For seasoned agents, the implication was unmistakable. This was not just a hub, it was a profit engine feeding a network that stretched across multiple states. Next to the ledgers were several hardware wallets and QR-coded documents linked to cryptocurrency accounts. Agents recognized these devices immediately. In recent years, large trafficking organizations increasingly use digital wallets to move bulk profits while avoiding the banking system. Evidence consistent with this trend appeared inside the warehouse. Recovery teams found crypto wallets alongside paper invoices for shipments disguised as industrial materials. The invoices listed cross-state deliveries routed through legitimate trucking firms, matching patterns previously identified by Homeland Security investigations in multi-state cartel probes. Far from being improvised, the financial machinery behind this warehouse operated with the discipline of a corporate back office. Moving deeper, investigators discovered a communications room hidden behind a sliding panel. Inside were encrypted radios, Wi-Fi repeaters, a hard drive loaded with messaging logs, and routing codes that pointed far beyond Texas. When specialists examined the recovered devices, they traced network markers linked to operations in Arizona, New Mexico, California, and Florida, a chain of communication consistent with a broader, multi-state trafficking system. These findings aligned with previous public reports noting that smuggling corridors often anchor themselves along border routes in the Southwest before branching eastward. What had begun as a raid in Laredo was now clearly connected to a coast-to-coast operation. What surprised many agents was the extent of corporate camouflage. The paperwork inside the warehouse showed the business registered as a logistics company with active contracts, tax filings, employee rosters, and scheduled deliveries. On the surface, it looked like a normal distribution center. Trucks going in and out, warehouse staff on shift rotation, invoices filed daily. Yet the documents found in the raid exposed what prosecutors describe in similar cases as the dual-track structure. One track was fully legal, shipping goods, managing freight, handling storage for local clients. The other ran parallel beneath it, transporting narcotics, laundering profits, and coordinating cartel activities. This dual structure allowed the network to blend into the American economy. The model resembled a legitimate supply chain, similar in efficiency to a large retail distribution system. In some ways, it paralleled what major corporations do to keep inventory moving. Barcode tracking, coordinated routes, optimized truck loading, except here every layer was repurposed to push narcotics across the country. Investigators remarked that the design mirrored the operations of recognizable chains like Walmart or Amazon in terms of logistics logic, but without any of the legal controls. It was industrial efficiency applied to criminal enterprise. As agents gathered more evidence, the most sobering twist emerged. In a folder of encrypted files decrypted during the raid, digital maps displayed a series of warehouse addresses marked with identical icons. Each icon referenced a separate hub, and the Texas site was only one of several. The data indicated parallel facilities operating with similar methods, some outside Texas and others potentially hidden within small industrial parks across the Southwest and Southeast. This discovery reframed the entire operation. The warehouse was not the headquarters. It was a satellite, a spoke on a wheel that spun across state lines. The implication struck investigators immediately. If this was only a regional node, then a network of similar sites might still be active, feeding the same interstate routes and financial channels. The Texas operation, massive as it was, now represented the starting point of a much larger pursuit. Federal agencies, according to public reporting around the incident, already anticipated follow-on raids as they processed the mountain of data recovered during the operation. The warehouse may have been the most visible piece of the puzzle, but the encrypted communications, route maps, and offshore linked accounts hinted that the full network extended far wider. They no longer rely on scattered safe houses or isolated couriers. Instead, they build professionalized networks with logistics strategies mirroring mainstream corporate systems. They use legitimate infrastructure, exploit legal business frameworks, and fuse them with concealed criminal layers. The raid in Texas pulled back that curtain. It exposed how carefully a cartel can camouflage itself within everyday commerce, and how easily illicit routes can blend with ordinary interstate traffic. As the evidence was packed into federal vehicles, and agents prepared to transport the 142 suspects apprehended earlier, the weight of the discovery lingered. This was not the end of the story. It was an opening chapter. The next stages of the investigation would stretch into other states, other warehouses, and likely uncover even more complex financial and logistics webs. But as agents mapped the financial routes, decrypted the communication logs, and confirmed that this warehouse was only one node in a nationwide network, another question emerged, one far more urgent than money or logistics. If the cartel could hide drugs so effectively inside a legal-looking supply chain, then what else, or who else, might they be hiding behind those walls? Inside the warehouse, what began as a drug bust evolved into a rescue operation nobody there was prepared for. As the assault teams cleared one corridor after another, a faint, muffled banging echoed somewhere deep in the complex. The sound came from a locked shipping container. At first, agents assumed it might hide more narcotics. When they pried the steel door open, however, the contents stunned everyone present. Tens of human beings, cramped and terrified, pressed against each other in the darkness. Many were dehydrated, gaunt, clearly abused, and visibly traumatized. Medical personnel stood by as agents dragged survivors into fresh air, handed out water, and assessed injuries. According to humanitarian reports on similar trafficking busts across the US-Mexico corridor, it is common for criminal syndicates to use warehouse-style safe houses to transport and hold victims in transit. The scene inside that container made one chilling fact clear. This warehouse was not only a hub for narcotics, it was also a waypoint in an illegal transport operation network. The cruel co-presence of drugs and living victims underscored the ruthless efficiency of the criminal enterprise. They trafficked poison and human lives side by side, stacking bricks of fentanyl and crates full of people within the same walls. By the time EMTs gave initial care and agents began cataloging the scene, investigators recognized this as part of a broader pattern. Criminal organizations using logistics infrastructure, trucks, warehouses, shipping containers to smuggle people across borders is a documented reality. In this instance, humans had been treated like cargo, hidden among illicit shipments. The warehouse's design, false walls, sealed rooms, locked containers, made it ideal for such operations. One of the survivors, once able to speak, revealed another disturbing layer. A small tracking device had been implanted under their skin by cartel operatives prior to transport. The device, recovered by forensic teams, matched patterns described in recent law enforcement briefings about advanced surveillance and control methods used by transnational trafficking networks. That device turned a harrowing rescue into tangible evidence of a modern method: cartel-level biometric control over human cargo. Authorities later confirmed that multiple victims carried similar implants used to monitor their location and prevent escape. This twist reframed the raid. It was no longer just a strike against mass narcotics distribution. It was a blow against an illegal transport operation cell embedded within a multi-state logistics network. The warehouse had served concurrently as a drug hub and a prison, a dual-purpose facility where drugs moved outward and people were stored, exploited, and transported. In that moment, standing among seized crates, chemical drums, and collapsed victims, agents recognized the full scale of what they had uncovered. This was not a simple crime ring. This was organized crime, industrialized. Supply chain logistics, encrypted communications, forged paperwork, all used to traffic both narcotics and humans across the country. What happened in that warehouse is a stark warning. The danger is not only the flood of poison into communities, but the trafficking of humans hidden behind legitimate-looking businesses. More than 3.4 tons of narcotics seized, 142 arrests made, and dozens of lives rescued. Yet the larger system remains, potentially active, somewhere out there. After everything uncovered inside this single warehouse, what would the full picture look like once investigators pieced together every map, ledger, device, and victim's testimony? As daylight finally broke over the Laredo Industrial District, the scale of what had unfolded inside that warehouse became impossible to ignore. Federal officials later confirmed that more than 3.4 tons of narcotics were removed from the site, a figure consistent with reporting from outlets that covered the operation and outlined the variety of cocaine, fentanyl-laced pills, heroin, and high-purity methamphetamine seized during the raid. Alongside it came 142 arrests, spanning drivers, warehouse staff, armed guards, and financial coordinators whose roles were essential to keeping the distribution network alive. Most shocking of all, dozens of trafficking victims were rescued from locked containers, a discovery that added a human cost to the already devastating picture of an organized criminal machine. By the time the evidence was cataloged and the last suspect transported, investigators had mapped out critical financial trails, interstate routes, and encrypted communication channels linking the warehouse to a broader network. From a U.S. perspective, the operation stood as a vivid example of how coordinated federal action, combining intelligence, surveillance technology, and rapid tactical response, can dismantle a major node in a nationwide chain. Yet even with such a decisive blow, the documents, maps, and digital files recovered during the operation suggested that other hubs may still be active across multiple states. That raises a question worth leaving with you. If this was only one facility, what will the next raids uncover? And how deep does this network really run? If you want to follow every step of this unfolding crackdown, share your thoughts below and subscribe to Military Power, because the next revelations may change everything we think we know about these hidden operations.